In 2018, the Utah Jazz shocked the world, being the favorite OKC Thunder in the first round with a rookie Donovan Mitchell and a 25-year-old Rudy Gobert. At this point, losing to the Rockets didn't matter because the sky appeared to be the limit. But 4 seasons later, the Jazz have progressed no further than the second round and have experienced some of the worst playoff blunders of our time. They would lose to the Rockets in just the first round in 2019, which is pretty understandable because they were the underdogs. However, they would blow a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets in 2020 in just the first round. In 2021, they finally made the second round again, but lost in just 6 games to the Clippers despite Kawhi going down in Game 4 and with them blowing a 25-point lead in Game 6. Surprisingly enough, that's not even the worst offense the Jazz have committed, as in 2022, they lose in just 6 games to the Dallas Mavs, despite Luka missing the first 3 games in that series. With the Jazz performing so well in the regular season over the past few years, but failing to have a deep playoff run, it looks like the Jazz have to make a major decision to avoid freefall. In this video, we'll look at the 4 routes the Jazz can take this offseason, one of which may be unavoidable, and another that I think they'll actually go with. Be sure to leave a like to support the channel, as each like makes a tremendous difference for this channel, and it's also the best way to support me as a creator. And if you don't mind, sub for more content like this, as we're going to be discussing all things concerning the offseason. When it comes to the Jazz's shortcomings in the playoffs, many people would point solely to Rudy Gobert and the fact that teams stretch him out to the perimeter to negate his defensive impact. However, the Jazz's biggest problem is their perimeter defense, with them constantly getting beat off the dribble and with them constantly blowing assignments and rotations. This leads to Gobert having to make up for his teammates' mistakes, being drawn away from the rim, and being left on an island against guys like Luka Doncic. But that doesn't completely absolve Gobert, as having a solid post game to punish smaller lineups could have gone a long way. Ultimately, it would have been ideal to just put multiple two-way shot-creating wings to surround Mitchell and Gobert, but the Jazz lack cap space and don't have the assets to just overturn their roster in that way. So, to avoid being stuck for the next few seasons, the Jazz must explore all possibilities to get better in the near future, even if that includes trading Rudy Gobert. The loss of Gobert's transcendent defensive impact will be greatly felt on the Jazz if he were to be traded, and perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidates just don't grow on trees. But this move would give the Jazz the ability to further build a team structured around Donovan Mitchell. Teams that have actually been linked to Gobert via trade include the Chicago Bulls, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Toronto Raptors. All 3 of these teams can offer a compelling package centered around Nikola Vucevic, John Collins, and OG Anunoby respectively, and more pieces and draft picks would obviously be accompanying those players as well. But how much of a step forward would the Jazz realistically take with one of those trades? They're not going to get a player close to Gobert in terms of impact, and while they would be getting better offensively given the returning pieces, their defense would obviously falter in Gobert's absence. But who knows? Selling for a lesser 5-man and going for more versatility might be the way to go here. However, how about if Donovan Mitchell acts out this offseason? In that event, I find it hard to believe that the Jazz would just acquiesce to his demands, since he still has multiple years left on his deal. But if they did trade him, could the Jazz potentially have a higher ceiling? Well, yes and no. On a positive note, even though losing Mitchell would suck, the Jazz are going to get a monstrous package that includes a young talent that they greatly believe in. For example, if Mitchell did get traded to the Heat, the obvious centerpiece of that deal would be Tyler Hero, who's just 22 years old and took a massive leap in year 3. However, there are major problems with a Mitchell trade. For one, if Mitchell is truly out the door sooner than Gobert, then the Jazz would still have to find some way to be competitive in the immediate future. Gobert is already 30 years old and is surely going to decline during his supermax, meaning that Gobert could be wasting precious years of his prime, given that the return of the Mitchell trade isn't going to be as impactful out the gate. Not only that, there's no guarantee that Tyler Hero or whoever they get out of that package will ever be as good as Donovan Mitchell is right now. Mitchell has already emerged as one of the best players in the entire league and has shown to be a postseason superstar offensively. But if you don't subscribe to the notion that the Jazz are actually legit contenders, then the idea of trading Mitchell doesn't seem that harsh. Teams will be lining left and right for his services, and getting picks and a 22-year-old Tyler Hero after a career year isn't the worst thing in the world. Finally, before I get into what I think the Jazz are actually going to do, I still have to propose the doomsday scenario where the Jazz trade both Mitchell and Gobert. As I stated before, trading either Mitchell and Gobert would lead to a major falloff either offensively or defensively, and any chance of the Jazz being a contender in the immediate future would be immediately squashed. Thus, in trading both, you could completely reset the operation and start a youth movement. A youth movement that could potentially propel the Jazz to higher heights in the long term. However, there's zero chance of that happening. Rebuilds are way easier said than done, and there's no guarantee that you'll ever find a player that's as good as either Mitchell or Gobert. And ultimately, this leads to what I think the Jazz are actually going to do. Despite all the rumors saying that the Jazz are shopping Rudy Gobert around the league, I think the Jazz will keep him and Mitchell together and work around the edges. Given that there will be a new coach in Utah, the Jazz will be sure to see what he can do with them together before making any major decisions. I fully expect them to shop Mike Conley and others to see what they can get in return, and outside the New Jersey designs, we'll definitely see a new look Jazz team. Basically, I think they're following the Trailblazers' approach to Dame and CJ. As we all know, Dame and CJ were together for a billion years before people started to legitimately worry about their ceiling. And despite everyone pointing out the obvious, the Blazers still ran it back with Chauncey Billups as the coach, hoping for a change. Yeah, it didn't turn out well. However, the Blazers finally opened their eyes and dealt CJ in order to better build around Dame. Likewise, the Jazz will follow a similar approach and give one last dance for their star duo. If it works out, then that means that the Jazz made their first deep playoff run. But if it doesn't, then you better take note. Thank you so much for your time, and be sure to comment down below what you would do as the Jazz's GM this offseason. Would you run it back with another year of Donovan Mitchell and Gobert under the new head coach, or would you split them or trade both of them? Be sure to let me know. Be sure to leave a like to support the channel, sub for more content like this, and hope to see you all in the next one. Stay tuned.